Okay, we'll try to use as in the best way the time we have. You all presented in the framework of research. I think it went much more beyond research, talking about communities, about interaction, about sustainability, and also in a local level and how it can be projected globally. This is an open session for all of you, of course, to make your questions as public, but also the questions can be answered by each one of you individually or together. It's an interaction session, let's say. Do we have any questions before I make a small comment question myself? No. Talking about research and about theoretical approaches, many references about philosophy and sociology also. How do you see your project beyond a dialogue opening in the community? How do you see your projects, your ideas practically applied? Which is a tool you think that as designers, as architects, you would work on your project in a direct ground approach? Each one of you can answer. The question is for all five of you, or 5 projects.
I just start and then we can
go like a line, like a line also.
I guess in our case it's twofold. That on one hand, we experimented with architectural intervention in the landscape, on the line precisely, to emphasize or thematize certain topics that are relevant, and to have an obstacle somehow also for people who just pass by and see something weird is happening as an entry to a discussion. And on the other hand, I think the project at large is less about ending up with a building, but shifting the ground upon which buildings emerge, to really change the discourse of what the territory means and then go back to architecture. And that is not us anymore necessarily, but it's really the change of the coordinates in a way.
For us, it's super also related with architecture, because when we work with the communities, all these women cooperatives, 2 of them actually, they were based in some abandoned or half-abandoned public buildings, mostly schools in these small villages. So we created a workshop last summer with them to help them rebuild the space that they work and they gather. And this summer, we want also to organize a workshop with students from University in Athens and from Berlin to also help them create like a space outside of the building, and from that village, like to spread around different villages to help them, like, or not help them, but create with them like spaces for encounters and interaction. And this is about design.
It goes a little bit of what you said about these like community-based workshops. I think for me, there's 2 folds. One is like regional, and then there's one from the bottom up. A lot of these farms, smallholder farms, for example, in the project that we're working in, they don't have a lot of networks, and so we're working with Kenyan startups actually, because Kenya is one of these countries that actually have something called like the Silicon Savannah, where they have a lot of like low tech, applications that they're developing, and so I think that really listening to what the community needs, and then also from a regional level, how it can be like superimposed without it being these like very monumental, I guess, superficial architectural like visions is key in creating these like commons.
I guess in our case, we are trying somehow to shift the idea of problem-solving architecture, like having an agenda and like making a space for it, and somehow understand what are the spatial configurations that communities, and what makes them create these habits and rituals that they're doing, but also not only existing. I mean, we can see, for example, space representation in front of a church. There was the square was needed for the people after the mass to meet, and it was a marketplace or stuff like that. But if we're speculating in a more hybridized society where religion or border or nationality is not anymore the defining aspect, how this new society, or what are the spatial needs for other kinds of uses that are not basically connected only to representation of space.
No? Okay, so mainly our discussion is about tourism, as you may have understood from the presentation. And we are fighting actually in these days, because we have been in charge of a study of how the plans in Catalonia are developing tourism. So everybody is speaking about tourism, the urbanistic plan, in a theoretical point of view, strategies, direction. Nobody's actually saying how tourism should be developed. This is why, because either we like it or not, there is a part of our city that belongs to tourists. And we have to accept it, and we have to regulate it as part of our city. So as far as we regulate social housing, the green space, we also have to regulate the tourist space. But before doing it, we need to accept that either we like it or not, one more time, there is a part of our city that belongs to them, and we are all tourists. So this is what we like to translate in practice. Stop doing touristic sectoral plans, because tourism is not something aside, it's part of the city. So as far as we understand it is part of the metabolism, then we can start treating it in the right way and probably find some solutions.
Any more questions? Okay, maybe also you can have any questions between each other, but we can, I think, solve them or give more space for other discussion in a small break for refreshments for 15 minutes, not more. And then we continue again for the next panel with the topic of storytelling. Thank you.